You're listening to Little Green Cheese, episode 24. Well, welcome back. I'm Gavin Weber, and this podcast is where you can learn about cheese making at home. Well, this week's episode, I'm going to be briefly talking about cheese tasting. And some of you who follow my other blog, The Greenie of Gavin, may have read that I had a pizza party in my backyard pizza oven. And for that, those pizzas, we made some mozzarella, and we sliced it up, and we froze some of it and grated it and put it on the cheese. So some of the pizzas we used pre-packaged what's known as pizza cheese, which I think is a mixture of commercial mozzarella, a bit of Romano, some Parmesan, and I think that's about it. But look, it tasted all right. It's not too bad at all. But we did have a cheese platter, and it was delicious. So on that cheese platter, we had some double brie, and it's one of those, not the petite bries that you buy that look like Camemberts and you can't tell the difference. This one was a half of a big wheel, come in a big wheel that are about 30 centimetres across, and it was delicious. It was made by a company called Unicorn, which I think are here in Melbourne, and it's a delightful double brie cheese. Delicious at room temperature, just right. The paste is just starting to run. Really nice cheese. We also had a smoked Dutch cheese, which I found out when I read on the back of the packet, because my wife Kim bought all these cheeses, was actually a processed cheese. So look, the flavour was probably artificial, but look, it tasted okay. I won't knock it too much. It wasn't a true smoked Dutch cheese, and I don't know if there's actually such a variety, but I think it looked rather similar to an Edam, which had been put through a smoker, but it was a processed cheese, so not the best. There's another one from King Island Dairies, which I'll just call out, called Roaring Forties Blue. And this blue cheese is very similar to the one that I make, and oh my goodness, I tell you what, it is delicious. A very, very nice blue cheese if you're in the market for that sort of thing. If you can't tackle Stilton yourself, then do yourself a favour, and if you live in Australia, look up the King Island Dairy Roaring Forties Blue. Very, very nice. As I mentioned, there was some mozzarella, there was some of my own, and there was an organic variety of mozzarella by True Organic. Now, I won't say that this tasted like soap suds. It did. It really did not have much flavour. I looked on the back of the packet, and it did have lipase in it, which is fine, and I think that's what you're supposed to add to mozzarella. And it was from organic cow's milk, but it just didn't have that, the day after flavour that I make when I make a 30-minute mozzarella. It really wasn't there. Anyway, and then next on to a True Blue Parmigiano Reggiano. This was imported from Italy. It was a little bit of a wedge. Wasn't cheap, mind you, but it was delicious. We just shaved it a little bit, and it really did taste nice. We also got there was a pecorino from Spain, I think, from Italy, which is a sheep's milk cheese. That was delicious as well. Quite hard, but nice just to chip a bit off and chew on that. It was lovely. But, all in all, I really do prefer my own cheese. And the only reason I didn't get out any of my cheese besides the mozzarella was that it's not ripe yet. And because we had that really hot summer, I didn't make any over the summer. I do have a Colby that's ready to eat now. And I just had a quick chat to Kim and see if she wanted to sample some. And she said, well, we've got so much of the other cheese left, which we do, still have a fair bit left. She didn't want to crack it open. So what I did, I put that into the cheese fridge to ripen a little bit longer. It's been going for 4 months now. I'll let that mature, probably just about for another month, and then we'll see what it tastes like. I think it will be sensational. It was a double batch. I used 14 litres of milk. So therefore, it should taste very, very nice. Anyway, it's time for the news. Well, this week's news comes from, I got it from Hospitality Magazine, which is an Australian online magazine, and it states specialty cheese venues on the rise. I won't read it word for word, but it looks like there are a few retail shops in Melbourne and Sydney that now have a vast range of cheese. And the first one they talk about here is called The Stinking Bishops, which is in Sydney's Newtown. It's a suburb of Sydney, and it operates as a retail cheese shop and a dining destination. It's co-founded with a guy called Jamie Nemo. They said, here's the statement, "We went around Sydney and looked at the experiences being offered by different types of cheese shops and found they neither focused on the retail or the dining aspect and didn't really integrate the two. We offer something a little different. People are able to walk in, have a look at the fridge, sit down and enjoy a sample and head back into the fridge and buy some cheese to take home if they please. We allow customers to indulge themselves in the world of cheese," he explains. Now that's quite interesting. Down in Melbourne, there is a cheese shop called Milk the Cow. Milk the Cow was founded by Daniel Verheyen, and he's the founder and director. They do a lot of corporates. They supply a lot of restaurants as well. And here's a little bit about the venue itself. It's situated in St Kilda. It stocks around 150 different cheeses. Half of these are from France. Oh, that's where Jean-Michel comes from, and probably many other listeners. And a large portion is sourced from other parts of Europe, and then there's a smaller sections dedicated to the US and Australia, which is quite surprising because there are a lot of Australian cheeses these days, and there's a lot of artisan US cheeses too. I don't know, I'll have to go check it out. St Kilda's not very far from here, probably about 50 kilometres, so next time I'm in the city I might check it out. So they've got a 5-metre long cabinet, which also operates as the bar top, and the whole idea is to offer artisan cheeses from all around the world. They do cheese and wine pairings, and something that I didn't really know is that they actually think that sake, which is a rice wine, they say it goes well with cheese, and I'll have to try that next time. So anyway, I'll pop that in the show notes. It's a lovely little article there. And as I said, it was called Specialty Cheese Venues on the Rise. It's written by Bray Carter. So let's check out the one voicemail that I have, and it's from Lynn. Over to you, Lynn.
Hi, Gavin. My name's Lynn. I was actually watching some of your YouTube videos, and I want to say thank you. They're super. I really do appreciate them. One of the things that you said that you were going to do was show us how to wrap Camembert, and I have had a bit of a search and I can't find the tutorial on how to wrap it. I was wondering if you could possibly let me know where I could find that. Thanks.
Well, thanks very much for your voicemail question, Lynn. Well, unfortunately, I never got around to making a follow-up video for Camembert, but it is on my to-do list. However, what I did do was on the Little Green Cheese blog, I wrote a full post about Camembert, and I'll put it in the show notes. It describes, it has the video, it has the recipe, it has what utensils to use, it has the full method, and that's including how to ripen the cheese. So it also talks about how long after the cheese is taken out of the mould does the penicillin candidum form on the outside, or geotrichum if you're using that, how to wrap it, when to store it, what temperature to store it at, and some tricks and tips that I've learnt the few times that I've made Camembert. Now, I'm certainly not an expert at Camembert. I don't think there are a heck of a lot of home cheese makers that are, besides one or two that I know, Gukon is in Canberra. He's a pretty good Camembert maker. And he also makes I think he was on episode 3 of the podcast. You can go and have a listen to it. He talks about a cheese called Camembert, which is a cross between a Camembert and a Gorgonzola. He makes a wicked one of those. Yeah, all the instructions are on Little Green Cheese, and I'll leave those in the show notes. Okay, now I have quite a few email questions, and let's get into those. This one's from either Michael or Grant. Doesn't say. It says, "Hi Gavin, good to hear you back on the Cheese Podcast again. I was thinking they were gone forever." No, they're not. They're still going strong. What I have done is drop the frequency down to fortnightly due to I'm not getting as many voicemail questions as I normally would. Plus, I'm not making cheese as often as I used to, and I'm hoping to pick that back up again. But fortnightly seems to be a good schedule. But hope you keep listening, Grant or Michael. He's got a question though. I have been making a few cheeses over the last few months, and have set up a nice cheese cave to mature them all in. I have attached some pictures. There were some very nice pictures on the email of some Stilton. Now, the question is, I'm a bit worried about the Stilton that I've made. Over the past few weeks, it started to get a orange slant yellow mould appearing. Is this okay? I thought it was I was thinking about iPhone it over with some muslin dipped in brine. I'm not sure what that means. I was thinking of wiping it over. I think some autocorrect has happened there somewhere. Anyway, thanks very much, Michael or Grant. I'm just wondering, it's been a while since I answered this one, so I'm wondering how the Stilton turned out. But the yellow and orange mould looks a bit like Brevibacterium linens, which is used to make certain washed rind cheeses. The bacteria will be harmless. It looks like your cheese fridge or the box that you put the Stilton in may have been infected with that. It's harmless. It does have a pleasant flavour, so hopefully your cheese turned out okay. But that's what it was. It was Brevibacterium linens, or B. linens is what it's normally noted as in cheese books. Yep, hope that turned out okay. Okay, the next one is from Helen. Helen says, "Hi Gavin, I've had 2 attempts at making mozzarella following your video. Both not so good. I ended up with a good tasting cheese, but not a good looking one. The cheese doesn't stretch like it should and ends up not sticking together. It just gets all stringy and difficult to mould into balls. Up until the microwaving stage, I have no problems. However, it's at this time that things go wrong. I believe it has to do with my microwave. I have an old microwave with 600 maximum wattage. I adjust the microwave based on a 1,000 watt output, but I think this was worse than the first. At what wattage of the microwave used in your video, please?" Sorry, that's what is the wattage of the microwave used in your video, please. I'll keep trying until I get things right. I look forward to your weekly emails and admire you for what you have accomplished. Regards, Helen. Thanks very much, Helen. The microwave in the video that I used is 1,000 watts. And basically, I've had success using a 600 watt microwave. That's what I use in my cheese making classes. And really, I just extend the time by about 10 seconds. However, there may be a bit of a problem with rennet and the calcium chloride. I had a bit of a reply back from Helen, and she said that she extends the time way more than 10 seconds, so the cheese may be too hot to start with. That's probably why it won't go into balls, because it's stinking hot, very stretchy. She uses a quarter of a teaspoon of rennet in a quarter of a cup of water, and she doesn't add any calcium chloride. So my recommendation is that because the milk in the video was non-homogenized, that's why I didn't use calcium chloride. But yeah, use a bit of calcium chloride, probably about 3 mils in quarter of a cup of water. Add that to your milk. That increases the soluble calcium, and it makes the curd firmer. And add just a little bit more rennet. Depends on the rennet you're using. Just add a little bit more, because lipase also prevents the milk from coagulating like it would normally. So add a little bit more rennet and you shouldn't have too much problems. So calcium chloride, add a little bit more rennet and you shouldn't have too many issues. Thanks for your email, Helen. Okay, the next one is from Wayne. And Wayne says, "Hi Gavin, I'm Wayne from the Northern Rivers, New South Wales, and I've been following your cheese making and copying some of your recipes. However, I'm having a problem which I believe is late blowing. My first problem was with Cotswold. When it blew, I thought the problem might have been Clostridium, which is a bacteria, and it was very smelly because I used raw milk. It also happened to the green pepper and now a Romano at 9 weeks using homogenised milk. I dried the Cotswold in the cave, then halved it and cryovac it for another 6 weeks. The family approve of it. It is quite sharp, the flavours, plus the flavours of the onion and chives. The texture is okay, but whatever happened isn't life-threatening. Well, it's not. It just, that Clostridium bacteria adds a gas, and it expands the cheese and it kind of blows up a bit like a balloon. I've had that problem with about 1 or 2 Parmesan I made, and I've actually written about that on the cheese making blog, Little Green Cheese. And yeah, it does. It blows up on the inside and the cheese is okay. It just doesn't look very nice. And when you cut it open, there's one great big hole in the middle. What I had to do was clean out my cheese fridge with a weak bleach solution. So that was about 20 mils of just normal household bleach, and I added that to 2 litres of water, and I just wiped over the cheese fridge to kill off any of that bacteria. Once I cleaned that out, the issue never came back again. Plus, actually, there was something else I did as well, and I changed brands of milk. I was using home brand milk, which is a generic brand that the supermarkets run here, cheap as chips, $1 a litre, and it's pasteurised and homogenised, and it must be a mixture of about, God knows how many cows. So what I did, I took my cheese making up a notch, and I bought a brand that you can get in here in Victoria called Jonesy's non-homogenised milk. It's been pasteurised, but it hasn't been homogenised, so it actually has the cream line on top. You have to give it a good shake before you pour it out of the carton and put it into your pot to make the cheese. But I haven't had an issue at all using that type of milk. It's obviously a better quality milk, and the fat globules haven't been tortured through the homogenisation process. So hopefully that helps. Clean out your cheese fridge. You do mention that you're very clean in the process. So I think that, just give that a go. Clean out your cheese fridge. Use a premium milk. If you're using raw milk, possibly pasteurize it. That might get rid of the bacteria that's causing the late blowing of the cheese. So hopefully, Wayne, that's helped you out there. And thanks for your question. All right, the next one is from David. And David says, "Hi, Gavin. Just wondering if you could give me some advice about Camembert I made 5 to 6 weeks ago. Firstly, I put the cheeses into the maturing box. I left them as instructed for a few days, then turned them. When opening the maturing box, all the cheeses had flattened out considerably. Is this normal?" Yes, it is. I found that if you fill up the Camembert hoop to the top, and then if it drops and then you add some more, and then you add a little bit more, the weight of the cheese is too much. So what I do now is I fill up the hoop once and then just go fill some extra hoops up. Just do it once and don't top it up. That way it doesn't flatten out too much and you get a decent sort of round of Camembert. Now David goes on, he says he's got another question here. So secondly, I followed all your advice in regards to the thermostat to keep the fridge at the right temperature at approximately 12 degrees Celsius. I noticed a lovely covering of mould of the right colour spread across the surface until it came time to wrap the cheese. Now it's been about 5 to 6 weeks, possibly a little longer, so I thought it was time to trial a cheese. It had a beautiful rind, but it was runny like yogurt all the way through and just poured out. What have I done wrong? Could you please help? Yes. For your Camembert, I think you've left it too long. The optimum time at trying your cheese should be about 4 weeks, and it looks like the temperature is a little bit too high. If you pop over to not the green here, Gavin, the Little Green Cheese, and look for the Camembert post, you'll see that the temperature should have been at 7 degrees Celsius. So being at 12, a little bit too high. Also, after you wrap it, I now recommend that you put it into your normal fridge at 4 degrees Celsius and let it age up until the 4 weeks. 4 weeks is optimum ripening period, because after that, and if it's too hot, there's a lot of ammonia created, and you'll find that the middle is very runny and quite ammonia. It's got a strong ammonia smell, and very runny in the middle. So try those, David, and see how you go. And thanks for your email. Last but not least, this email is from Michelle. Michelle says, "Hi, Gavin. Do you have any cheese classes in London or any online training? Many thanks, Michelle." Thanks for your email, Michelle. Unfortunately, I don't teach in London. It's a little bit far to travel from Melbourne, Australia. Something like 16,000 kilometres. A bit far to go to teach cheese. I'm sure there's some fantastic cheese making classes there in London. However, I do have some online cheese making video tutorials, and you can find them at my YouTube channel. I'll just put that in the show notes. I've already replied back to Michelle and sent her the direct link, but I will pop that into the show notes as well. Well, that's all the questions I have this episode. Hopefully you've enjoyed it, and we'll pop back the next time. Now, before I go, one thing I want to ask everybody who listens to the cheesemaking podcast. This cheesemaking podcast is quite popular. I get over 1,000 downloads per episode, which never ceases to amaze me. I'm amazed by the amount of people who are interested in home cheese making and have found this podcast. But I'm going to ask everybody out there who's listening, I'm going to ask a very big favour. What I'd like you to do, if you could, if you've got the time, pop over to iTunes and I'll put a link through on the show notes. And if you could rate and review the Cheesemaking Podcast, that'll help it get further up the charts and more people will find it. At the moment, it doesn't even rate in the top 200, which amazes me because there's so many downloads. My other two podcasts rate in the iTunes list here in Australia anyway, and they actually have less downloads. So please pop over to iTunes, rate the show if you think it's good, and let me know via comment. If you've got any questions, don't forget you can leave a voicemail question and I will answer it on the show, just like I do every fortnight or every week I used to. But the show's going to go fortnightly now, so leave me a question either via email. I'll reply back to the email as quick as I can, but I'll also read it out on the show as well. So for upcoming workshop dates, recipes, they can all be found at littlegreencheese.com. You can also find my cheesemaking ebook, Keep Calm and Make Cheese, The Beginner's Guide to Cheese Making at Home. That's available on the site in all ebook formats and at most good ebook retailers. You can also find my cheesemaking video tutorials within that ebook or on my YouTube channel. Just search for the username Greening of Gavin. Thanks for listening, Curd Nerds, and stay tuned for the next episode of the Little Green Cheese Podcast. During this podcast, you heard royalty-free music by Kevin MacLeod. I played Malt Shop Bop, News Theme, and Call to the Dairy Cows.